Hi, this is attorney Nicole Christie from the Christie Law Firm, where we work hard to make families stronger. So today I want to talk to you about different acronyms that you might hear. Sometimes DCF, Department of Children and Families, they use a lot of acronyms. Even we as lawyers will use them because when you're dealing with it every day, you use the same terms, they become almost like a second language. However, to the family who's not familiar with that or haven't been dealing with DCF for a long time, those acronyms can just go over people's head. And sometimes I find it very frustrating that we talk like that and yet the client is expected to fully understand the issues when we're using all kinds of acronyms. So one of my jobs as a lawyer is when I'm talking with DCF and my client is present, when they're using acronyms, even when I understand them, I stop and make DCF explain what those acronyms are, just so the client has a clear understanding and there's no need for them to come back and say, I didn't know what that meant. We want clients to understand what's going on with their case, because that's how best we can fight the case and be able to either get kids home or get DCF out of their lives. So I'm going to walk you through sort of like the start of the investigation into maybe the ongoing portions of the case to kind of give you some tidbits about what acronyms you might hear. I can only go over the most common ones, but in the description below we'll have a link that connects to DCF's website where you have a long list of acronyms, but this way at least we'll talk about some of the most important ones. So when a call comes into, quote, the care line, it's not an acronym, but care line is that central location where all calls come in. Even if it's a written report, it gets funneled through this care line. Then care line designates the type of report. So they'll either accept it or not accept it. And if they accept it, they designate it for different kinds of categories. Some common categories are FAR or an investigation. FAR, F-A-R, stands for Family Assessment Response. And what that means is that the family isn't being investigated for abuse or neglect necessarily, but maybe they need to come in and see whatever that issue is and make sure the kids are okay. It's important that when DCF calls you and it's an investigation, you know whether or not it's a FAR or an investigation, because the investigation is actually looking at whether or not there's abuse or neglect. So at that point in time, a social worker, SW, is assigned. And specifically, you might see in documentation ISW. That stands for investigation social worker. That's different from the ongoing social worker, in which you might see ongoing SW, SW standing for social worker. The investigation worker, the ISW, is only involved for 45 days. If they can't resolve the case within 45 days or the kids have been removed, then they send the case over to the social worker. In the process, DCF can't make referrals or even talk to me like an attorney on your case without an ROI, which is a release of information. Sometimes, again, you might see it in writing if you ever get copies of your record. ROI, I had the family sign an ROI. That is a release of information. So keep that in mind whenever you see that. DCF can't talk to any of your providers, can't talk to any of your kids' doctors or the school without that release of information, unless there is specifically an issue of abuse or neglect that one of those parties has to report because they're mandated reporters. Now, every social worker, whether they're an investigator or an ongoing worker, they have a supervisor, and they're called SWS. And so it's a social work supervisor. So when those individuals, they are the kind of everyday traffic cop, I might call it, on the caseload. They'll direct the worker to do certain things and maybe make some decisions, maybe in the moment. But big decisions about your case actually end up also going up to the PS, who is the program supervisor. They are above the supervisor. And so when it's a major decision, especially when the children should return home, when the case should be closed, when should DCF file neglect petitions, that's made in this particular group. Now understand the program supervisor has a supervisor and it goes all the way up to the commissioner. But when it comes to your everyday case, when it comes to what's happening in the life of your case, it is those three individuals that are involved. Now, DCF has to stay involved with your family. They may refer you to different kinds of services, and you might see things like substance abuse eval, and that really is just that, substance abuse evaluation. They want to make sure that there is any type of documentation that is needed. Sometimes you might see TX, which means treatment, substance abuse TX. What is the substance abuse treatment? Sometimes you will see initials IVP. Now that stands for intimate partner violence, IPV. I'm sorry, intimate partner violence. And in that, that is domestic violence incidents that happen between two individuals who have been in a relationship or are currently in a relationship. So this excludes the interactions or fights that might happen between two brothers or two sisters or an aunt and an uncle or an aunt and a niece. That's different. Intimate partner violence has a different category, and so DCF may refer your family to IPV type of counseling or want you to see a counselor who specializes in, quote, IPV. There are also in-home services that they might want to implement. One such service is called IFP, which is Intensive Family Preservation Service. And that usually has to do with individuals who might have, maybe there's a mental health concerns with the kids or with the parents or family dynamics that need to be worked on. I kind of like that program because they allow people to actually go into the home versus people having to go in a car, go to a facility. So if you're somebody that prefers someone to come to your home and is a little bit more convenient, IFP is one of those services. And so there are different kinds of services that go into a case depending on the stage of the case. And I'll talk a little bit later about the services that are typically implemented when reunification is an issue, and I'll do that in another video. So these are some major acronyms you might hear, things that could impact your family. Listen out for different services, and typically these services might have an acronym, but they're also attached to an agency because agencies throughout the state get different contracts to provide different kinds of services. So whenever you hear an acronym, if they use a bunch of letters, do not be afraid to stop them and say, what does that mean? And then write that down. Or have them send you an email, have them send you a brochure so that you can understand what the acronyms mean and you don't walk away thinking one thing and DCF meant something completely different. So again, if you ever have any other questions about DCF, we have a bunch of videos here on the channel, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us, but definitely go through all of the different videos that we have. It's good to be educated when dealing with DCF because once you are, you know what questions to ask, you know when to push, and you know what to expect. Until next time, take care.